community. And my background is I have a master's in social psychology, and I do coaching for people from a wide range of backgrounds, for people, executive coaching, people in the work-life balance issues, olim, and I also do stress workshops for teens and for adults. And I'm happy to be here to share some tools that I've learned and some understandings about stress in particular that I found very helpful, that I found for people that I work with to be helpful, and for my kids. I think these are things that we can share for ourselves, for our teens, for our grandkids, for our children, etc. So I'd like to start off just with sharing something personal, a story. When we first moved to Ra'anana, our daughter, Ariella, who's now married, was about 16. And we moved in from Zichron, as I said, and it was probably our first week. I didn't know any of her friends yet. And she told us that she was going to go out with some friends. It was probably about 8 o'clock at night. And I said, great, have a good time. She said, okay, I'll be home around 10:30, 11. Wonderful. 11 o'clock comes and goes, 11:30 comes and goes. And I start to get nervous. And I'm wondering, I wonder where she is. I wonder what's going on. We also weren't used to kids coming home late. Different towns operate differently. So I wasn't used to that yet. And I was starting to get pretty anxious by about 12. And, I thought, oh gosh, I don't even know who to call. So I called the only person who I knew here who had a kid in the same age, who happened to be Sarah Stark, and asked her if perhaps she knows where Eliyahu is, and perhaps if she knows where Ariella is. And she said, I don't know, Eliyahu is at home, but I don't know where Ariella is. Now, fast forward, Ariella and Eliyahu are now married, so it is quite a funny story. But Yoni, my husband, decided just to walk around the house. I guess he was saying goodnight to whatever, and he walked into Ariella's room, and there she was, fast asleep in her bed. So I had gone through all kinds of machinations in my mind about, where she might be, what might have happened to her, got myself, pretty worked up. And in fact, she was fine and upstairs in bed. And I tell that story because I feel like oftentimes we can let stress kind of influence the way that we think, the way that we behave, and it can color our whole experience. And so, these kinds of tools that we'll be talking about today, hopefully, if I knew then what I know now, and if I had implemented, right? Now I know, but I don't necessarily always implement. But if I had implemented, I think that my experience would have been different. So to start off with, I just want to also say the tools that we're going to be using are helpful for everybody, but of course they are certainly not in place of therapy, medications, et cetera, when needed. Everyone needs to know what their particular issues are. So to start off, I just want to talk about, I'm going to share my screen with you, and to talk about how common stress is, because stress is extremely common. Do you see my screen? See my screen? Yes? No? Can you see my screen or no?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Okay. Okay, very good. So stress is common, and this is a Gallup poll from 2018. And what we see here, and this is pre-COVID, obviously, right? So we see that in the US, about 55% of people report experiencing stress on a daily basis, okay, and worry on some level on a daily basis. And those numbers, obviously, with COVID have only risen. This is reflective for adults as well as for teens. So the stress issue is very prevalent for our teens as well. And interestingly, another statistic is that about 75% of doctors' visits are attributed to some sort of underlying stress issue. So people might come in for other symptoms, but oftentimes the cause is stress. And different people get stressed out by different things. What might make me, feel uncomfortable and anxious might not for someone else. And so, we always need to keep that in mind, that we need to be sensitive to whatever worries one person doesn't necessarily mean that it worries us, and it's not legitimate. So to respect different people's stresses. And stress is basically an automatic physical, mental, and emotional response to a challenging situation. It's automatic. It's not something we plan. It's not something that we intend to happen to us. It just happens. And so, before we throw stress under the bus, just wanted to hear from some of you about ways that you think stress actually could be a positive, because it's obviously not just black and white, right? There could be some positives to stress. So I'd love to hear from you about ways that stress can be positive in your life.
How can stress be positive?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would incentivize you.
Okay, in what way?
If you had to do a piece of work,
mm-hmm.
and slowly the deadline was building, when the stress gets high enough, you do the piece of work.
Yeah, great. It's great for procrastination, right? It's great to stop procrastination. If I have a deadline, I'm going to get that work done. Other ideas, you can just kind of unmute yourselves and say if you have other thoughts.
Just to add to what Emma said, I think sometimes stress is like caffeine. It's like that extra cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you do feel more nervous when you really feel it. But on the other hand, it does push you to get working.
Yeah, great. It can give you that adrenaline rush, that you might need. Yofi. Anyone else?
Also,
or it might help you handle a dangerous situation, even like with your daughter. Maybe if she hadn't been in bed, then you would have maybe done something to, protect her. Or like if you're walking in a dark street, you're looking around to make sure, there's no one following you. So it might help you defend yourself, protect yourself.
Great example. That's, absolutely. It can be a warning sign to us, right? Like if you're in a dark alley, if you're in even a social situation that you feel is not, that something's a little bit off, or perhaps you're in a place that you shouldn't be, or things like that, that feeling of stress could be a good indicator. Anything else? Okay. So we also have, I think in line with the adrenaline that Karen had mentioned, you could also see that, let's say, you're driving and someone comes out from the side, God forbid, like close to your car, you instantly, right, you have that like heart palpitation, that real feeling of stress, slam on your brakes. And that's also a helpful aspect of stress. But if we have too much stress, and if we have it at the wrong times, it can obviously have a negative impact on us. So we try, so it's really important to find the balance between a healthy amount of stress and to be aware of how we're feeling. So, the consequences, I had mentioned about some of the medical consequences of ongoing stress that we experience on a regular basis. So that can be headaches, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, skin conditions, chronic illness, arthritis, depression, anxiety, asthma. I mean, stress it can definitely exacerbate many different health issues. And when we think, it's important, like during this workshop, the idea is also to think for ourselves about how we experience stress, because as I said, we all experience it, right, in different ways. The more we can kind of understand and get in touch with how we feel when we are stressed, and to identify the moment when we get stressed, the easier it becomes to help manage it. So if you can just think for a moment, if everyone can just think for a moment of a time that you might have felt some stress over the last week, let's say.
Can I say something, Sasha?
Sure, please.
It's Hani. It may sound very negative, but I think that I am stressed so often that when I'm not stressed, that's when I realize there's something different, which is horrible.
Okay, so that's that. That awareness right? To be aware is really important. And that's when I think you can start to try to work on that. And if you identify those moments where you're not feeling that stress and you enjoy, I assume that those are enjoyable moments, you think, okay, how do I get to that more often? And you can try to.
No, actually, I'm bored then. I'm really bored.
Okay, to each their own. So, all right. So you'll figure out how much stress you want to feel. But for you also think about a time where you did feel stressed and think about where you feel it in your body. You know, Connie, also think about where do you feel it in your body and what happens to you when you're feeling stressed. Let's just take a minute to think, not a minute, a few seconds to think about that.
Interesting. Usually headaches, right?
Okay, so you have headaches.
But it does get me going. Like the stress does, like you said, makes you accomplish things. So I'm still going to go with the positive.
Okay. Well, there could be positive stress and negative stress, right? Like it depends on how you experience it. We're talking about stress that is not productive stress. Okay, not the productive kind of stress, the stress that holds you back, the stress that makes you uncomfortable, the stress that makes you feel so anxious that you can't think clearly. That's the type of stress.
The stress that we all have when you lie awake from 1 till 4, being stressed that you can't fall asleep and things are going round and round and round. That kind of stress.
That kind of stress.
When you end up doing every single kind of yoga breathing that you ever learned.
Exactly. So where do you feel that, Emma? Where do you feel that sort of stress, like it's your thoughts? You're talking about racing thoughts. What else do you experience when you have that stress?
Well, you feel it in your stomach.
Okay.
One feels it in one's stomach.
Okay. So
sometimes you realize you're not breathing.
Okay. So you're holding your breath, you're feeling it in your stomach, and your thoughts are racing. Other people?
Sometimes and grinding your teeth. You know, there's a whole fun things you can do.
Okay. Yofi, thank you. So those are ways that are very common that people feel it. Anyone else have other places in their body that maybe they feel it, the things that they experience? Some people feel it in their chest. Carolyn, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say that your heart beats very fast and it's very difficult to slow it down. Palpitations, that's also when you're very stressed out and getting like panic attack.
Absolutely. That's very common also. So we can feel it in our hearts. We can feel it. I feel it like here in this part of me sometimes. Some people feel it in their stomach, as you said. Feel it in your chest, the headaches, all those things that you mentioned are very classic ways that, and different people feel it in different places. It's helpful to understand a little bit about how stress actually works in our body. And this is this is certainly not a detailed biology lesson by any stretch, but just to explain bigadol. So Hashem created our bodies, I think, in an incredible way. And we have many different systems that all work together. And we have what's called the voluntary nervous system, right? That's the nervous system that allows us to do actions. So I want to speak right now, I'm speaking, that's part of my voluntary nervous system. If I want to type, if I want to pick something up, etc. We also have the involuntary nervous system, and that's sort of the operating system, the back end of how our body works. So that controls our breathing, our blood flow, our sweating, our pupil size, etc. And thank God we don't need to worry about that. Like, can you imagine if you had to also function in the world and make sure that we're breathing enough, etc. So that's all taken care of behind the scenes. And in that involuntary nervous system, there are 2 modes. We have the everyday mode, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. And then we have the emergency type of mode, which is the sympathetic nervous system. And when we're in the everyday mode, right, our heart beats in sort of a slow rhythmic pattern. Our breath is full and slow. Our pupils of our eyes are the right size. Our stomach is active. We have increased blood flow to our stomach and to our brain, which is super important, right? We need a lot of blood to our brain so we can think clearly. We can have positive hormones that come in. And when we are when we're in a state of emergency, right, in a state of stress, there's a different response in our body that goes on. And our heart beats really fast. As you just mentioned, our breath could be very fast and shallow. We're just breathing like from up here. Our pupils can be the wrong size. Our stomach becomes inactive, and blood goes to our major organs. So it's going to like our arms, our legs, our heart, and less of it is getting to our brain, which really affects the way that we think and the way that we function. And that was very, very useful back in the day, you know, where we were sort of in caveman times, right? And a lion was chasing after us and we needed to run for our lives, you know, fight, flight, or freeze. So that response was very useful. But now, when we're dealing with whether it's kids in the Army, work-related issues, family health issues, all kinds of other things that are going on around us where we really need our wits about us, and to stay calmer, that response is actually very unuseful. So we want to be able to help our body and our mind distinguish between the emergency mode and the everyday kind of mode, and to then allow ourselves to think as clearly as possible and to function as well as possible. So that's, and there are different ways to do that. There are tools that involve physiology, and we're going to learn a couple of tools for that, a couple of techniques for how to breathe in a way that can help us to calm down, some muscle relaxation techniques. We can look at our thoughts differently, kind of analyze our thoughts a little bit more, and that can also help us to change that automatic reaction. And we can change some of our behaviors. We can do things that are going to be more productive and that are going to help us to be, to calm ourselves down and to be able to get out of that emergency type of mode. So before we start with some of the techniques, does anyone have any questions? Okay, the Sedigamore. So let's get started. We're going to start off with a breathing exercise. And, you know, Emma, you had mentioned all the different yoga breathings, and there are many, many different types. There's no monopoly on the best way to breathe. And this is just a technique that I found to work and that has been well researched. Most of actually pretty much everything that I'm sharing with you today, by the way, is part of either like low intensity CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for the general population, for people who do not necessarily have any clinical diagnoses, and they're different tools that have been researched and found to be effective. So the quickest way, okay, to get ourselves out of that emergency mode is through breathing. And what we basically do is we almost trick our brain into thinking that everything is okay. So as we said, when we're anxious, right, it's like rapid heart rate. And when we slow down our breathing and we're able to breathe at a more regular pace, it then kicks in a cycle that allows the rest of us, the rest of the systems in our body to calm down as well. So this breathing technique is pretty simple. You can do it and I recommend practicing it. Basically you exhale for the double the amount of time that you inhale. And you want to be sure to be filling up your lungs with air. I don't know about all of you, but I know that generally my breath is not that deep. If I think about how deeply I breathe, I'd be curious to see, just by a show of hands, how many of you feel like you breathe really deeply on a regular basis? Okay, yeah, me neither. So when I'm conscious of it, then I can start to do it. Right. So what we want to do is to learn to breathe a little deeper. And especially if we practice this on a daily basis, we'll see that we can almost automatically calm ourselves down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take in, we're going to breathe for 3 seconds. We're going to inhale and then exhale for 6. And what you want to do is put your hand on your stomach. I'm just going to lower the camera. Put your hand on your stomach. And when you inhale, See how my stomach goes out, and then exhale. My stomach goes back in. So you want to be sure that you're getting in enough air, okay? And to do that, the way that you test it is by putting your hand on your stomach. So how about if we all do this for 2 minutes? And if you feel comfortable to close your eyes, I think that that helps. And so what you're going to do is you're going to sit up nice and straight and put your feet on the floor. Put your hand on your stomach. Okay, and you're going to inhale for 3 and exhale for 6, and make sure that your stomach is, expanding on the inhale and deflating on the exhale. So I'm going to put on the timer, and hold on 1 second. Sorry. Okay, and we're going to start. And I'm making that sound because that way all the air goes out more effectively. So I'm breathing in through my nose for 3 and out through my mouth for 6. Okay. Open your eyes. How was that for you?
Very lovely. You could see everyone who had their cameras open was busy breathing calmly. If everyone could open their cameras, it would be really nice.
Next time.
I feel like I want to go to sleep now. That's the problem.
All right. So that's a good exercise to practice daily, actually. And if you can do it for about 3 minutes a day, it's very helpful. You can do it while you're driving, but you can't close your eyes in that case, obviously. You can do it while you're, lying in bed, reading, whatever it is. If you do it every day for a long tkufa, right, for a few months, let's say, for 3 minutes every day, you'll find that even when you're in situations where you can't take those 3 minutes to actually do slow breathing, but you take one deep inhale and exhale, your body is already trained to respond to lower the tempo. So that's a great, easy one to implement. And it's great also to teach again, for ourselves, for our kids, grandkids, etc. Another tool that's helpful is to, and this is really good to help us to focus. This is helpful for, during a meeting, during an exam, during chaos at home, at whatever time, to put your feet flat on the ground. Again, when we ground ourselves, when we put our feet flat on the ground, we're grounded. So when people public speak, etc., it's helpful when they ground themselves like that. And then you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. I can't show it to you, but and you inhale. Okay, and you do like a big inhale and exhale. That's another really helpful tool that you can just use. And that's great because no one knows you're doing that. That's something that's like very, you know, that you can do at any time. So if everyone just practices that for, you know, 1 or 2 times. And that's helpful to get you to feel more focused. Another exercise that I'll just tell you about, and we'll try it a little bit. We don't have enough time to really do it in depth. But another exercise is it's called progressive muscle relaxation, and that's where we tighten and we move up through our body, and we tighten the different our different muscles one at a time, tighten and then loosen. So we start with our feet, and you tighten your muscles as much as you possibly can, and hold it like that for about 5 seconds, and then release for about 10 seconds. And then you'll go to your legs, you'll tighten your legs for 5 seconds, really, really, really tighten, and then loosen. And you can do it each time twice. You can do, you know, and then you can do your legs again, tighten, loosen, go up to your stomach, your chest, your shoulders, your face, your eyes, your mouth, tighten and loosen. And what happens with that, that is helpful for when you're trying to fall asleep at night. Tova, Emma, actually, you had mentioned about trying to fall asleep at night. That's useful to help you to fall asleep easier. And as you are relaxing your muscles, you can also sort of visualize that you're letting the stress out, right? Through each of those, every time you exhale, when you release your muscles, you just visualize that you're letting that stress go out. So those are a few physiological exercises that you can implement. Anyone have any questions about those, about the physiological exercises?
What does the tense thing do instead of just constantly relaxing?
Well, I think you notice, right? You notice how you feel when you're tense, and then you notice how you feel when you're relaxed. And as you release that, as you're contracting your muscles and then releasing them, you're letting out tension. You're letting out physical tension, and in your body as well, that helps to relax you.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You said the second one. What are you doing with your feet flat on the ground?
So your feet are flat on the ground, and your tongue is on the roof of your mouth. So, I don't know if you can see, but anyway, you put your tongue like right up there on the roof of your mouth. Okay, and you breathe in and out.
With pressure of the tongue, or just laying there?
You can just lay it there. I mean, you should feel it. You should certainly feel the tongue touching the roof of your mouth.
Great, thanks.
And you want to take an inhale and an exhale in that too. Any other questions before we go to the...
Just don't try that while you're driving with your eyes closed.
No. Exactly. That's the main thing. Eyes open at all times while driving. Okay, Yofi. So the next issue that I think is really fascinating is just how much our thoughts play a role in our day-to-day existence. And we often don't even notice how many thoughts come in and out of our minds during the course of even a minute. There's a great exercise where you sit and you close your eyes and you notice the thoughts that are coming in and going out. There's a lot of this in mindfulness as well. And you just see, wow, there's so many, racing thoughts that go through my mind. And we have a choice always. We have a choice as to which thoughts we engage with, which thoughts we don't engage with, and how we choose to engage with them. We can't control what our thoughts are, but we can control how we respond to our thoughts. And what we want to try and learn to do as much as possible is not to let our thoughts control us, and instead for us to respond in the way that's going to be productive. That's always what we're trying to do, is to see how we can be more productive in a positive way. So cognitive behavioral therapy talks a lot about how there's a relationship between what we think about, what we do, and what we feel. So our emotions and our behavior and our thoughts are all very much intertwined. And there's a cycle. So if I start to feel worried about something, then I get anxious, and then I can't focus. And then the situation, I feel like the situation is hopeless. And then I don't try and help myself. And then I get more anxious, right? And then I feel more hopeless, and then I don't help myself. And so that is a cycle that we want to try and break and to be aware of when it's happening.
What do you mean by help yourself?
So you could help yourself, right? Like in the story I started off with Ariella, I probably, first of all, I could have walked around the house much sooner, right? Instead of waiting. In a situation where let's say you're very worried because you have a big assignment, that you need to do for work, and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this done. It's so huge. I'm overwhelmed. And so you start to feel just totally overwhelmed. I could help myself by taking one little step and get started, right? I could do something that is proactive rather than sort of simmering in the feeling of helplessness, which so often happens. So
it's like when you make Pesach or you make Rosh Hashanah. You're making a million lists and you think, I'm never going to get it all done, never going to get it done, and then you make that first flavor or whatever it might be, 100%. And you're like, okay, I can do this now.
I can do it.
The first thing.
The next one, right? Absolutely. And those are really productive. Those are very positive actions, right? To like just start. And oftentimes then we see, okay, it is actually more manageable. So there's a great model in Hebrew. It's called the Emet model. Some of you might know it, which is, and actually let me send in. Hold on, I'm going to share again. Let's see. Okay. I want to go back. Sorry. Okay, Yofi. Oh, I don't know why I can't get to that. Hold on. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So Emet, which stands for Irua Machshavat Tguva, where you have an event, a thought, and a reaction. And that happens to us. We constantly are experiencing events in our lives. We will have a particular thought about that event, and then we will react in a certain way. So I'll give you an example, and this I think is good for us. I think it's good for our teens as well, and different people respond to it differently. Let's say I'm new to town and I walk in and there's this is pre-COVID, yeah? And please God post. Walk into an event at shul and people are sitting around at different tables, and I see people who I kind of know a little bit sitting around the table, they're talking, and I walk over and I don't feel like anyone's really saying to me, oh, come sit. So I think, you know what, I'm just gonna move over. I'm just gonna go sit by myself in a different area. And so the event was, I walked in, right? I saw people, I interpreted that they didn't want me to sit there. That was my thought, they didn't want me to sit there. And so my reaction was, I went and sat by myself somewhere else, which obviously creates that cycle that we spoke about before. Another thing that I could have done, right, an alternative thought that I could have had is I could have gone in, seen the same group and thought to myself, wow, you know what? It looks like they're having a good time talking. They seem like nice people. I may as well go sit with them. I can, learn more about them, get to know them. And then my reaction is, oh, okay, that was nice. I got to know some more people, feel more comfortable, etc. So it's like it's what we want to do is think about alternative thoughts, because the thought is what determines oftentimes our reaction and the feelings that we have when we do certain things. So there's an exercise that's that I think is helpful to do that, and that is called the 4 steps model. And the 4 steps model, well, we can take my first example that I gave and actually hold on, let me just see. I was thinking it would be really nice if everyone was able to do their own Emet example, but I think we're not going to have enough time to do that. So I recommend that you think about after this workshop or over the coming days, just notice situations that you're in where you have a particular thought and a particular reaction that you wish was different. and see if you could change your thought and what your reaction would then be. So I recommend that everyone tries that. But a model that can be helpful for us is to use this 4-step model. And what we do with that is we identify a failing thought. And it's a failing thought because it's a thought that sort of takes you down the rabbit hole. And for me, with that story with Ariella, it would be, oh my gosh, something terrible has happened. Like almost exclamation point. Something terrible has definitely happened. And instead, I actually had no idea if something terrible had happened, right? So I put a question mark at the end and I turn it into a question. Something terrible has happened? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. Please God, not. And then I provide an alternative thought to take me out of that and out of that negative sort of cycle. And I recognize that I'm feeling anxious. I'm not poo-pooing it. It's not like I'm saying, oh, all is well. I'm recognizing that I'm worried and I'm articulating it to myself. I'm saying, I'm really worried that something terrible has happened. And that's making me feel very anxious right now. So I'm identifying that at this exact moment in time, I'm feeling very anxious. And I'm giving that its space. And I'm also recognizing that it's for a particular amount of time. It's not forever. It's not who I am. It's a thought that I'm having. And then I take the next step, which is I say, okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now because I'm worried that something terrible has happened, but I'm not going to let this thought control me. And that's the important piece. We can let our thoughts control us and take us into all different directions, or we can say, instead, I'm going to do something productive, or I'm going to do something that I enjoy. And that we can apply to very, very often, where we can just say, okay, this thought's not going to take over. I'm going to be in control of it as much as I possibly can. I'm going to try and do something that's going to be productive. And that leads us to the last category of, sort of things that we can do, which is to do behaviors that are positive, right? We can, some, you had mentioned some before, but we can certainly, exercise is great. Eating healthy, getting enough sleep, reaching out to friends, volunteering, helping other people, limiting our social media exposure when that's causing us anxiety. All of those are also behaviors that we can implement to help us to manage our stress a little bit better. So those are some tools. We went through some of the physiological with the breathing. Just to remind you, it was the breathing, it was the feet on the ground, tongue on the roof of the mouth, and the relaxation, the thoughts, right? Really thinking about the Emmet model. What's my thought and where is it leading me to? What's an alternative thought? And the 4 steps model, and I'm happy to share that if anyone wants, the 4 steps model, which then helps us to recognize that the thought is taking a lot of space, it's trying to control, and I'm going to instead I'm going to try and control it more. So I hope that was helpful.
Sasha, that was absolutely more than helpful. It was wonderful. I'm sure that everyone would agree that I think we would love to have you back more often, because I think that these times are causing everyone a great deal of stress. I'm sure that there's no one who will disagree with me. I really would love everyone to turn on their cameras so we can see you all with your lovely faces. I'm just going to take this opportunity, as well as thanking Sasha, to remind you all as a community, my phrase here, it came to me at 3:30 in the morning, by the way, and I did wake up Richard to tell him, don't be a part, be a part. So join in on the things, because being social is very, very important. Remembering the support of the community, I'm sure that helps to deal with anxiety. Help somebody less fortunate, that's another idea. And on that note, Sasha, and I think all of us, everyone do your Mishlach Manot. I'm just pushing that because that's the next thing we're doing as a community. To sign up for the Mishlach Manot, it's going to help a bakery that's local, that's really having a tough time at the moment. It's something we do as a community. And the same way that here you're all seeing people who are new faces, when you get that list of people who've joined in, you'll be like, oh, look, we are not sitting here on our own being miserable. We are part of a community. And if it's a voucher and you don't want it, just send it on to the Mishnah Lechem and they will help people who are really also in need. So it's a win-win. So ladies, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Sasha. That was quite helpful.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha.
And then
Bye,
Zara.
everyone.
Bye,
And
everyone.
if anyone, Nechama, ideas for next week, if anyone has any good ideas for next week, we'd love to hear from you. Because if not, we're all going to be sending things to Nechama that we think she should dress up in for Purim.
Oh, my pleasure. I love dressing up. Purim is my
Fantastic.
I love it.
I think next week we have to do something to do with dressing up for Purim.
We'll try. We'll speak about that.
Let's see what we can do. Lovely to see you all.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.